Welcome to the Anti-Noise Experience, podcast endurance noise, random musings. It's hump day, Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, getting ready to go over to Beach Park for a Bagels Distance Project workout. It's getting toasty. It's supposed to be 108, 109 this weekend. I am leaving tomorrow morning, but unfortunately the heat's going to hit like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But my friends Liz, Sarah, and Laura and I were all going to do the High Sierra Trail after my fall. I didn't feel I was properly trained for an adventure of that magnitude. So I'm going to turn off the buzzings there. These dang things. So I told them I would just drive them to the trailhead up in the Sequoias. They're going to hike 70 miles to the top of Whitney and then exit at Whitney Portal. But we've had all these fires and there's just no way they can do the hike. It's a little too dangerous. The rangers told them that they're not going to be out there helping them because they're helping with the fire situation. And then lastly, I basically said, hey, the big thing is you don't want to go out there because the views are going to be terrible. All you're going to see is smoke. So you'll be like, oh, there's a pretty lake down there. Too bad we can't see it. So they put that off. Kind of last minute change. We're going to be going up to the Tahoe area, Mammoth, Lake Tahoe area. And they're going to do some hiking up there. I'm going to drive Liz up there. I'm going to be hanging out in Mammoth this weekend. So, I'll be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So if you're in the area, get a hold of me on social media through Andy Noise. I'm going to do some training, kind of reminisce when I took the 2008 drillers up there, and we had training camp up there, and it was a great experience. So that's kind of what's happening on my end. Some good news from Christopher Chavez says that another positive update on Tommy Rivs' cancer battle from Kim, his wife. CT scan revealed a tumor reduction of more than 50%, which exceeds expectations. Physicians are being contacted by medical journals because his progress is such a rarity. Well, he's such a rarity himself that I can imagine it might be, being a miraculous recovery. I know my friend Allison, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013, she was in great shape from the ultras, and I think that really helped her survive and beat breast cancer. And then a couple years later, finish Western States and Angels Crest 100-mile races all in the same summer. Gary Fisher, blast from the past, says in 1979 I named and started my company. It's become a sport, and he called it Mountain Bikes in P.O. Box, Fairfax, California. And I am at 57. I'm kind of at a good age in that, like in the 70s. I was born in '63, so in the late 70s, I was in high school in my teen years. Rap, alternative, punk, heavy metal all got really big. Plus the sports of triathlon. I won a triathlon, the very first Bagels triathlon. Very first race triathlon I ever ran was my senior year. Mountain biking kind of got started. Trail running had a big resurgence. A lot of the ultras got going. And of course there was a running boom in the late 70s and 80s. But I remember first getting out mountain biking, and it was just kind of like riding glorified beach cruisers. And it was truly an endurance sport. Then, of course, I'm going up to Mammoth, and it's kind of the situation is, the ski resorts are like, hey, we have these mountains empty of tourists and snow during the summer, and we have these lifts, and then they realize, hey, we could just have mountain bikers come up here. So mountain biking has become much more of a downhill sport, lots of equipment intensive, and, I don't mind you if you ride to the top of the hill, you get to ride down it, but this whole taking a lift to the top and riding down, I think is cheating. We have a great training opportunity here, Mount Pinos McGill Trail, and unfortunately there's a 6-7 mile road, so they just drive, put all their bikes in the back of a truck, and then they just come screaming down that trail. And even though the trail signs say that everybody yields to horses and cyclists yield to pedestrians, hikers, these guys, they very rarely yield to you. Or if you do step out of their way, they're like, oh hey, thanks, but it's not like you had a choice of getting out of the way. But in '79, that's kind of when it all got started. Some interesting Midwest cross-country news. I saw a meet where it seemed that I think all the athletes were masked up running the 5K. Rich Gonzalez from Prep Cal Track says 6'2", 280-pound lineman Royce Daugherty making high school cross-country debut in Michigan because the state association has delayed the start of football season, and he wants to get in better shape for it. Way to go, Royce. I still remember when we'd go up to Fresno to the Woodward Park where the state meet is every year, and I remember seeing a Fresno team one time, and a kid ran by, and he must have been doing conditioning for basketball, and he was at least 6'8". Biggest guy I've ever seen, running in a cross-country meet. I mean, he looked like a man. He looked like LeBron James out there, but it's good to see him out there. When I coached cross-country here in Bakersfield, we did get some of our sprinters and jumpers to compete, and I think it really helped. I mean, we had a couple triple jumpers come out, and they would place in the JV races because they were such great athletes, and then later on would do really well in the other sport. So Kilian Jordan, of course, he's not been in America this year, but he says this, disclaimer, this is not training advice, but he says basically that it works for him. I have a hard session or race where it's muscular steepness and has intense cardio. I like to do an easy 3 or 4 hour scramble. I believe the kind of training is beneficial for different reasons. Steps are short, so you never reach muscle extension, and it's technical, so the pace is slower, so you back down the cardio. Every step is different, so that you don't impact the joints and muscles in the way you did in the race. And at least not all important, it refreshes the mind, just enjoying the surroundings and being concentrate, but not having to focus so much on the hard pace. And I came up with this idea way back when I started coaching the Bakersfield Distance Project in 2009, in that we would usually run long on Saturdays. I'd prefer to run long on Sundays, but a lot of people have, commitments like church and family. But a lot of the major marathons, when you're running them, are on Sundays. And why are marathons usually on Sundays? It's easier to close the roads on Sundays is basically the reason. And so I'd rather have you, when you're training, do your long run or your hard workouts on the day that you're going to be racing, like Sunday. But anyways, we would run long, anywhere from 10 to 20 miles on Saturdays, and a good hard effort. We had this great 20-mile run called the dump run, where you started on the bluffs, went down. It's about the only hills in Bakersfield, so it was a really good hilly paved course, and you could mix it up with the Killer Hill course, which was a good trail course for Bakersfield. We don't have a hill here more than half a mile long for the most part. But what we do is on Saturdays we'd have that, and then on Sundays we'd have a tradition called the YOTS and Bagels hike. And we would meet at YOTS Park. It's about a 3.5 mile walk, 2 bagels and blenders, buy a bagel or two, and then walk back. And it was great because the fast athletes and everyone else would stick together, get a good 7 miles. And kind of what Kilian's saying here, it would take us a couple hours to do that 7 miles. And it was a good way to just kind of flush out from the hard workout or the hard race you did before. So very interesting. Kilian's kind of doing the same kind of concept, except he's going out and doing on the technical trails, which, if they're available to you, more power to you. Jonathan Marcus tweets, athletes, health drives performance. If you don't get quality sleep, if you don't eat real foods, if you don't hydrate well, if you don't spend quality time with friends and family, then no matter how hard you work, your performance will suffer. Prioritize your health to perform. As you know, sometimes I just cannot speak. Man, oh man. Jonathan Galt, some great pole vault action's been going on in Lausanne. It's interesting, even though pole vaulting really doesn't seem to have anything to do with endurance sports, I'm always going to be linked to pole vaulting in that I started running my sophomore year in high school, and one of my teammates who had been running since grade school, when I was in 8th grade, I actually went out and I made the mile team, and then I didn't run again for a couple more years, but Doug Owens was the premier runner in town in his freshman sophomore year. He ran great. His brother was a great runner. But then when I came out cross country my junior year, Doug just started going from being a 16-minute 5K to an 18, 20, 21-minute 5K. So by the time track season came around, and it was just a mental thing, not really sure what's going on, but he decided to move to the pole vault, and he went from the pole vault, he went from running, pretty fast endurance athlete to being a 14-plus pole vaulter. Of course, back then we had Doug Wicks going 17 feet from South High, but Doug did perform well, and he went to USC and did vault for them for a while until he had a really bad accident on one of those all-terrain vehicles, 3-wheelers, out in the Pismo Dunes, where this weekend everybody's going to be in the Pismo Dunes. So I'm always kind of linked to pole vaulting in that my good friend Doug ended up being a vaulter, so we were interested in vaulting, and we had helped him carry, our weight work was carrying the pits out and back, and we'd watch and try and pick up pointers for him. Of course, that was back in the day when videotaping and all that was very rare. And then it's interesting, and when I started coaching high school in 2006, that so many of the pole vault coaches were also distance coaches, and it makes sense because distance coaches, you're only working with the kids on the track maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and then you're sending them off to run. So why not pick up another sport? And, kind of pole vaulters, even though they're crazy kids, they're a bit like endurance kids. Having said that, Mondo Duplantis, the youngster, he went 6.07 meters, which is the highest outdoors since Bubka in 1994. Sam Kendricks became the 6th man that clears 6 meters and lose. His 6.02 is the best non-winning mark ever. Yeah, that's the American Sam Kendricks. I was in Berlin 1986 or 87, and they were having one of the world-class meets there. I don't know if it was a Diamond League back then, but we got to see Carl Lewis, and we got to see Sergey Bubka in person. We were in the end zone, so we were literally maybe 40, 50 yards away from him, and he was just an amazing athlete. I always tell people, Sergey Bubka used to do this, where whatever the minimum was to break the world record, Sergey would always move the bar up just enough so that he could get a world record bonus from Nike. Smart man. Still amazing performances he did so long ago. So that's been pretty cool to see. Jesse Diggins, I don't get too political. I mean, could definitely, but what's the point? But she has a tweet here, which kind of, it's not political. It just says, do you have a plan for how you're going to vote? Possible answers. Yes, of course, my voice matters and I want to protect the land I love. Or, not yet, but I'm going to visit makeadamnplan.org and use Protect Winter's tools to get ready. Be ready, make your plan. And so, yeah, if you love the outdoors, you're an endurance athlete, you obviously probably spend a lot outdoors, look into it and vote the way you think you should. Or if you don't vote, don't bitch. I love how this whole year, all the running groups, Hoka, the Bowerman Group, and many other teams affiliated with shoes. The Hoka team, which is out of Flagstaff, they had a meet yesterday, and Kellen Taylor ran 31:07 for the 10K. Makes her 7th fastest U.S. all time. They did have a male pacer, so that wouldn't really work. It wouldn't count. Stephanie Bruce ran 31:34, which was a 25-second PR, and she's been crushing it from the 10K down to the mile. And she's in her 30s with a couple kids. She did do really well in the Olympic trials, but just goes to show you can constantly be working on those skills and running different races. Don't get stuck in a rut. That was one of the things I do when I'm training by myself. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and of course I listen to Adam Corolla, and I like to listen to Adam Corolla in the Dr. Drew show. And if you ever listen to Adam Corolla, he talks about secondhand smoke quite a bit. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s and just always around it, and it was gross. And I was a pretty militant anti-smoker. I mean, I'd get in people's faces and tell them to quit smoking and all that. In fact, now it kind of sucks, and I've complained about this in the past, that especially smokers now have been banished out of their houses, so they're outside smoking. So often when I'm out walking, these guys are sitting out on the stoop, and I got to breathe it. And then, of course, the pot smokers, they're all in the park smoking pot. That it's like you're at a reggae concert a lot of times when you go to parks. Like tonight, going to Beach Park, and I guarantee you there'll be some people blazing over there. So Adam complains, and he goes, about the whole secondhand smoke thing, and where are the bodies? If it was such a bad thing. I mean, it's gross, but it doesn't really kill people, and he complains about it. So it was really funny when I was listening to episode 316 today. That's what you're doing, then it can't be wrong. And I said the show started off with a PSA about the deadliness of secondhand smoke. So I tweeted that, and Dr. Drew, of all people, retweeted it. My tweet. I'm sure Drew got a laugh out of it because I'm sure he's listened to Corolla bitch and complain about that forever. And that's definitely the case. And then, speaking of some more humor, I like this. I follow the dad jokes, and it says, someone asked me to name 2 structures that hold water. I was like, well, damn. Did you figure that part out? So, as always, stay healthy, be boring, not epic.